Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet Nashtaprayesva Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So, welcome everybody to the Śrimad Bhāgavatam class. We are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 17, Text 17. No, Text 20. Text 20. Please repeat. Hiranyaksho nujastasya. Hiranyaksho nujastasya. Priya priti krid anvaham. Priya priti krid anvaham. Gada panir divam yato. Yuyutsur mrigayan ranam. Hiranyaksho nujastasya. Priya priti kridanvaham. Gada panir divam yato. Yuyutsur mrigayan ranam. Hiranyaksho nujastasya. Priya priti kridanvaham. Gada panir divam yato. Yuyutsur mrigayan ranam. Hiranyaksho nujastasya. Priya priti kridanvaham. Gada panir divam yato. Yuyutsur mrigayan ranam. Hiranyaksho nujastasya. Priya priti kridanvaham. Gada panir divam yato. Yuyutsur mrigayan ranam. Hiranyaksho nujastasya. Priya priti kridanvaham. Gada panir divam yato. Yuyutsur mrigayan ranam. Hiranyaksho nujastasya. Priya priti kridanvaham. Gada panir divam yato. Yuyutsur mrigayan ranam. Hiranyaksho nujastasya. Priya priti kridanvaham. Gada panir divam yato. Yuyutsu mrigayan ranam. Hiranyaksha. Hiranyaksha. Anujaha. Younger brother. Tasya. His. Priya. Beloved. Priti krit. Ready to please. Anu aham. Every day. Gadapani. With a club in hand. Divam. To the higher planets. Ayataha. Traveled. Yuyutsuhu. Desires to fight. Mrigayan. Seeking. Ranam. Combat. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Abhay Charana Aravinda, Bhakti Vedanta, Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. His younger brother Hiranyaksha was always ready to satisfy his elder brother by his activities. Hiranyaksha took a club on his shoulder and traveled all over the universe with a fighting spirit just to satisfy Hiranyakashipu. Please repeat after me. His younger brother, Hiranyaksha, was always ready to satisfy his elder brother by his activities. Hiranyaksha took a club on his shoulder and traveled all over the universe with a fighting spirit just to satisfy Hiranyakashipu. Purport. The demonic spirit is to train all family members to exploit the resources of this universe for personal sense gratification, whereas the godly spirit is to engage everything in the service of the Lord. Hiranyakashipu was himself very powerful, and he made his younger brother Hiranyaksha powerful to assist him in fighting with everyone and lording it over material nature as long as possible. If possible, he wanted to rule the universe eternally. These are demonstrations of the spirit of the demonic living entity. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Hayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kantha Radha Kantha Namostute. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yatkrita kripatamaham vande Sri Gurum Deenatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much for positioning your lives in making space and time for the king, for hearing about the king of literatures, Grantharaj, Śrimad Bhāgavatam. I am in no way qualified to serve such a great book, but by the order of our spiritual masters and all the acharyas coming down the line, may the words coming from my mouth hold something relevant and pleasing to the Vaishnavas. And if there's any misrepresentation in my presentation, please forgive it, as you are all Saragrahi Vaishnavas. So we're reading this very interesting chapter on Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, basically setting the stage for what we're going to get to in 4 cantos from now. it is always good to remember that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would hear this pastime of Prahlad 100 times. And he would hear another, basically Prahlad's brother in the Bhagavatam, Dhruva Maharaj, 100 times before going on to the next section. So we must understand how important it is for the devotees to really understand every aspect of this pastime, because it is not just about head knowledge, but actually the knowledge in the head should lead to transformation of the heart. So, as we see here, and there's so many aspects to this Nrsingadev and Prahlad pastime, but we haven't even touched Prahlad yet. We're still at because even if you look at how the Bhagavatam structuring it, he gave Shukadev Goswami gives the whole 7th canto to pretty much majority or almost the whole 7th canto to Prahlad and Nrsingadev, and then it's almost like he couldn't control himself. He starts talking about it in the 3rd canto, in Maitreya and Vidura. And so in the 3rd canto, so you can see how, and we've covered this story in 3 layers, as I was saying in my last class. We've talked about this in Kashyapa and Diti and that whole pastime, and how the brothers were born, and then we talked about on the primary level of Jay and Vijay and the 4 Kumaras. So we can see these 2 brothers, Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. They take birth. They're twins. Hiranyaksha is the younger one. So as we've seen in the previous verses, they have grown to be as tall as mountains, so strong. They have biceps. And abs, and they're like definitions of strength, and they didn't have Hollywood or anything back then. So instead of trying to go and exploit the material nature by becoming movie stars and different positions of power, they wanted to become rulers. This verse, the Sanskrit, it says Tasya Priya. Tasya Priya means his very beloved. Who was Hiranyaksha very beloved to? His brother Hiranyakashipu. And because of the love of Hiranyakashipu to Hiranyaksha, Hiranyaksha felt kind of indebted. He said, "I want to reciprocate with my elder brother." So what does he do? He goes to Divam Yato. Divam Yato means he goes to the higher planets. And in the higher planets, who resides? We're talking about Svargaloka. We're talking about Indra, Chandra, all these demigods, they reside there. Did Hiranyaksha go with a plate of fruits? Did he go with some Mahaprasad? Did he go with any gifts of offering? No. He went with Gada Panir. He went with his club. What is it? A club made of paneer. That is not the Bhaguranga Prabhu's purport. No, but he went with a gada. So it's not that he went to go make friends with the demigods or have amicable relations, or he wanted to fight, and what was his goal? His goal was to and it's funny that they're using how do we know he desires to fight? Yuyutsuhu. Anybody know a verse where the yuyutsu is invoked? This word? Can you recite it? Yuyutsava. Yes. Samaveta Yuyutsava. Dhritarashtra was also using this word. His one verse in the Bhagavad Gita, he's saying Yuyutsu, the fight, So Hiranyaksha was actually going around, he's trying to pick a fight with everybody. He wants to put his brother in charge, and both of them can expand their demonic influence over the whole universe. But unlike Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu tried. He had won over his brother with his love, and expanded his demonic influence to him. But to his own son, he could not expand his demonic influence. He failed in his training of Prahlad, and Prahlad became, by the grace of Narada Muni, he actually became a pure devotee, which is antithetical to the plan of Hiranyakashipu. So, leaders, if you look at leaders today, they have, a term limit. You can spend 4 years or 8 years or some places 10 years, and then you take an election, and then it goes. But Hiranyakashipu wanted to be a ruler eternally. So much so, he wanted to be immortal. So the motive so he pleased Brahma as we're studying. So he did a lot of tapasya. He stood on his toes. An anthill grew on him, and he wanted to please Brahma. And why did he want to please Brahma? Is because he wanted to be immortal. But we understand this immortality. That's shared by the spiritualists and the materialists. But what was the desire to be immortal? To enjoy unlimited sense gratification. This was Hiranyakashipu's motive. So this is the spirit of demonic living entities in general. They want to work against the material nature. You can see, in general, you can classify the activities of the demons in 2 categories. And you can say the materialists as well. They want to invent new ways of sense gratification, and they want to increase the duration of that sense gratification. So they want to make new ways. They'll say, "Oh, we'll invent the car. We'll invent social media, and we can increase our sense gratification like that way." And then so much so that now we're that now it's become a problem. Even as I was saying in my last time I was given the opportunity to speak, is that there was a time before social media. We didn't have to know every time we eat, we have to take a picture of our food. We didn't have to say Instagram every time we want to use the restroom. We don't have to put it on our Snapchat story. There was a time when not everybody needed to know everything that we're doing. But now it's become such a necessity. It's actually become the sense gratification has actually fired back. It's become now there's cyberbullying, there's suicides over all these things. These were not problems of before. So they're finding new ways of sense gratification, and then they want to increase their pleasure. I saw there's a new soda. There's like Pepsi Zero, 0 sugars. Have all the Pepsi, non-alcoholic Heineken. There's like all these drinks, like all the benefits of soda, but you don't get drunk. That's something amazing. But actually, they just want to gratify their senses, but they don't want the reciprocations that come with that, because it's the material world. Anyway, this training, in this verse, training is very much emphasized. So you're either training is in matter, in the material, or in the spiritual. If you're training the material, you're training to control the material nature. And there are 3 modes, according to Bhagavad Gita, these modes of material nature. And you're training according to each mode. He's disposed to control nature in that ways. If you're somehow you're trained in the mode of passion, you're very passionate in how you try to control the material nature. As we learn in Bhagavad Gita, Trai Gunya Vishaya Veda, Nistrai Gunyo Bhavarjuna, Nirdvandho Nitya Sattvasto, Niryoga Kshema Atmavan. Yes. That Traigunya Vishaya Veda. The Vedas talk about, how to achieve mystic power, how to have a very nice family life, how to get some education. But Krishna is saying, and in these material modes, Krishna is saying you have to go beyond those. You have to be beyond the dualities of our material activities. Our whole lives are actually just dualities. If we think it's hot, if we think we're in Chennai, or Hyderabad, where we think, oh man, maybe I should go to Norway. So cold, and people in Norway is like, I want to go vacation. It's too cold. I want to go I want to go somewhere hot. And man is attracted to woman. Woman is attracted to man. In Kali Yuga, anything. Everybody's attracted to everything. But Krishna is making it very significant here, is that we must rise a bit above this tendency to exploit the material nature, and always it wants us to identify primarily what is our spiritual identity. This is Krishna's ultimate teaching. It's abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. That is actually our true spiritual identity. Please surrender unto me, Krishna says. Ma sucha, please don't fear. There's nothing really to fear. But we can see the ultimate duality this material world offers us is life and death. Yes, everybody is worried about if they're going to die, and we know as spiritualists, if everybody dies, there's actually nothing really to worry about, because that's it's inevitable. Srila Prabhupada in 1976, he was walking in Mayapur, and he was making some predictions that the next world war everything will be finished, and then they asked. I heard this from His Holiness Prahladananda Maharaj, and he was saying that they asked Prabhupada, "What should we do?" He says, "Just chant Hare Krishna. Whether it's 20 years or 40 years, whether it's inevitable, you know. So if something is inevitable, then why worry, right? This is there's nothing you can change about it. So I heard some devotees they emphasize going on a news fast, you know. If you go on CNN or Fox News or anything, you'll hear about some atrocities happening on the other side of the world. You can only put your thoughts in prayers, but actually you put yourself into more mental distress by thinking about it. But what can you practically do about it? If there's a flood in, let's say, Indonesia, me sitting in New York City, what can I actually do? I can give some Lakshmi to help them with their relief efforts. But practically, this doesn't require that much of our taxing of our brain. But what the modern news, it wants you to worry about a little about everything. But we should worry about a few things that are actually pressing, you know. So this idea that I must survive and thrive in this material world is actually a product of illusion. You look at the spiritualists and the materialists, the real training for both of them is to become immortal. The spiritualist is also trying to become immortal. But the materialist, what they want to become immortal, why? To expand their sense gratification. But the spiritualists understand that to become immortal is not to enjoy unlimited sense gratification, but it is it is by and for the platform of devotional service. This is why we want immortality. In that sense that we want to get out of this cycle of birth, samsara chakram, that we want to get at this cycle of birth and death. Why? Because we want to eternally serve Krishna according to our true nature. So you have to know yourself better if you want to understand your relationship with Krishna. How your mind always changes. Have you noticed that? Like when I was in college, I changed my major 3 times. I wanted to be a doctor first, and then I wanted to be a business, and then somehow I settled on economics, which I don't know how. It doesn't help. I can do that with all 3. Yeah, so the mind always changes, you know. The mind is very fickle, you know. You're one day you're a son of somebody, and then one day you become a father. Your identity changes. Some people, they become they're suddenly employed, and then the next day they may be unemployed, you know. Same way, like I'm in New York right now, but in a couple hours I will be in Ohio, you know. I'm taking a flight. So my relationship is everything's changing, and sometimes our mind is also changing. You know, one day I want to be an astronaut, one day I want to be a lawyer. Like my mother would always tell me, my cousins were visiting us when we were kids, and every day they would ask, you know, what do you want to be when you grow up? Every day my answer would change. First day, astronaut. Second day, lawyer. Third day, I want to become a what are those? Bull rider. You know, ride a bull. You know, bucking bull. And then on the 5th day, well, what did I say? I said I want to become all 5. I want to be the first astronaut, lawyer, bull rider. You know, all these things. So you can see that the material modes are affecting us. So how can we understand knowledge if we're still covered? We have to approach something that is ajita, that is infallible. So that is Krishna. Krishna is infallible, and therefore, because of his infallibility, the words that he has left through his pure devotees are also infallible. So the way you actually know yourself is by actually knowing Krishna, and once you know about Krishna, then you actually know about yourself. So the acharyas have given this formula of sambandha, abhidheya, and prayojan. So, like, let's say we're chanting, and sometimes the mind goes here and there. I heard this from Mahatma Prabhu. Mahatma Prabhu was saying in one japa class, he's saying that one of the key things for attentive chanting is you have to know who you're chanting to. Sambandha. If you don't have sambandha, how can you serve a stranger? We're doing service to Nam Prabhu. The holy name is a person. It is practically a personality who can reciprocate or withdraw according to Sri Nam's pleasure. So we have to know actually who we're dealing with. So that's why if we get our knowledge from Shastra, we can actually factually know who Krishna is. We can know Baraha Pidam Natavara Vapuhu Karanayo Karanikaram. There are so many verses describing how Krishna looked, how he dressed, how he acted, how he dealt with his dealings. These are actually these verses, and this knowledge is actually meant to absorb our mind, intoxicate our mind fully on the pastimes of Krishna. And once we get fully absorbed in Krishna, then we'll actually understand who we actually are. We won't identify with this. I think one place in the Bhagavatam it says that the material body is. Please correct me if I'm speaking anything incorrectly. But the material body is actually a big shame on the eternal spirit soul, because if you look at the qualities of the spirit soul, it is doesn't die, can't get burned, can be drowned. It's eternal. But if we look at the body, it is all those things. Your body can drown, your body can be burned, your body can be cut. It can be everything. So it's actually a big burden on the soul. But so when we identify as the soul and not the body, we're actually giving ultimate freedom. But how do we identify as the soul and not the body? We can say that as lip service. We can chant it 1,000 times. But until we understand the philosophy given by Krishna, as it is given by Krishna, then we will actually truly understand the purport of that understanding. And Krishna himself says, how do you understand me? It's like when we have the instruction manual. Bhagavad Gita is kind of the instruction manual of he has built the material world. He has, like, you go to IKEA and you buy a table, and then so you have put this nut into this washer on washer A and washer B. If you're like, okay, throw away the instruction manual, I'm going to make the table myself, you might end up making a chair. Who knows? It may not be a table anymore. So we should always refer to how Krishna is trying to make us understand. Can we pull up Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 1? Krishna is saying how to really understand him. We should probably put a Bhagavad Gita. Yes, well, let's chant the Sanskrit just so we have that. Maya sakta mana partha yogam yunjan madashraya asamshayam samam gramam yatha gyasi tachtrinu. Translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "Now hear, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga and full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt." So Krishna is referring to this yoga in full consciousness, and he alludes to this yoga in the previous verse, which is chapter 6 text, the last verse in chapter 6. Maybe we could pull that. I think it's Yoginam Api Sarvesham, chapter 6, last verse. $47, yeah, that's it. Yoginam api sarvesham mad gaten antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam same yukta tamo mataha. Translation. And of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. So you can see there are multiple parts to this shloka. There's like the one piece is the one with great faith who always abides in me, who thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me. He is most intimately united with me in yoga. So Krishna is saying this is the topmost yoga. And in 7.1, he was saying that those who practice this yoga, they can know me in full, right? So actually, if you think about, I think this is a very, it's kind of empirically doesn't really make sense that to know somebody, you have to learn about them like in the books that they read, which is definitely there. But Krishna is saying that actually by doing service unto me, you will actually know me in full. This is basically what he's saying. And also worshiping with great faith, and you will know Krishna in full. So usually you read, like, if you want to know, like, get to know a person, now in 21st century, instead of going and say, hey, how are you? Hey, I heard your name's Natabar, nice to meet you. You actually, first I'll say, I'll ask somebody, what's his name? And then I'll go on his Facebook profile, learn a bit about him, Okay, Facebook didn't, maybe he's not active, go on Instagram, Natabar, and then know about him then. But actually, the Vedic point of view is that to fully know Krishna, you actually have to serve Krishna. There's a famous story of His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when some learned person had come and said, I have a very important question to ask you, and I don't think anybody else can answer it except a scholar like you. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, first you should go and wash some pots with these brahmacharis, and then do some service, menial service. And then the guy was, in my understanding, he was kind of like, whoa, I'm a big shot, okay. And then so he was washing the pots, and it was so absorbed in the service. When Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur came, he said, okay, what is your question now? You have done some service. He said, actually, it is all answered. Just by the rendering of devotional service, actually it solves a lot of the questions that we think are unexplainable. I especially, like in my life, I've seen practically that whenever I felt like I had like some insolvable problem that nobody could answer, Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Uchate, that if you just serve Rishikesh, the senses can be controlled, and actually a lot of our questions can be solved. So I would just like to pause there. I made some points about Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, why Hiranyaksha wanted to rule the universe, the spirit of living entities, the two activities of the demons, primarily new ways of sense gratification and longer sense gratification. We talked about training in the material versus spiritual. We talked about the ultimate duality, life and death. We talked about this verse of 7.1, how to know Krishna fully. I'd like to pause there, and I'd like to request if there's any corrections or questions, we can take those now. Just a warning, I might have to head out soon because of my impending departure. So if there's any questions or comments, we can open it up here. Hare Krishna. If there's any corrections by His Holiness Chandrasekhar Maharaj or His Grace Ram Roy Prabhu, I would also be I would also be open for those. Anything? Okay. You have anything?
I have a question. So you were saying how today they are having a more healthier way of sense gratification.
Healthier?
Healthier, yeah, like Pepsi Zero.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with that? Isn't it good?
It's not good in the sense that it's only avoiding the inevitable fact of surrendering to Krishna. It's they could, because what they're doing with these things is that they want to, like, just like they have they in the 90s or 2000s they started doing zero fat, they like, oh, no fat in this food, it's like 0 calorie. They would say 0 calorie things, and they put things like zero Pepsi Zero. It's like all 0 calories. But what they do is that they put so many different chemicals or things in there. Now they're realizing that actually fat is not very because I remember one Prabhupada disciple was saying, he was just reflecting, in the Bhagavad Gita 17th chapter, Krishna says, foods in the mode of goodness should be fatty. And in the 90s, when this whole movement was going on of no fat, no this, no that, the people were like, oh, what's the Bhagavad Gita talking about? It's like foods with fat are like poison, But now scientists are starting to realize that foods with good fats, with healthy amount of fats like ghee and coconut oil, all these things are good in moderation, and humans have been eating it for thousands of years. But these things like excessive sugars and high fructose corn syrup and white sugars, all these things are actually detrimental to health. So you can see how things have kind of changed. So when they invent things that they're just kind of it's like putting it's a famous saying, it's like putting lipstick on a pig, You have the same problem, but you're trying to make it prettier, but it's the same problem again and again. Ultimately, it's the surrender to Krishna must be the conclusion of all the activities.
Yeah, I have one more question. Then you were talking about how we are affected by the 3 modes of mental nature. So in the life of devotees also, how do we know, or how to make sure we're not acting under the modes of material nature, especially because today all the gurus are traveling across the globe. They're not with the disciple, instructing them, on a very regular basis. So many a times, even if someone accepts a guru, it takes, he may meet his guru only once in a while. But so, within his meetings, he can easily go and get under the modes, and so what can be the solution for that?
So the question is that how to stay out of the modes for a long period of time.
The question is how to make sure that we don't get under the influence of 3 modes, especially because even if someone says I'm following my guru, but the guru is elsewhere, sometimes so far away, the disciple doesn't even contact the guru, isn't it? So he's doing what he wants.
Yeah, this is Maharaj, maybe we would like to add something to this.
I think that's a very good question, but devotees are more and more answering that question with the idea that we have Diksha Guru and we have Shiksha Gurus. And sometimes in ISKCON, people feel, well, I have my Diksha Guru and everybody else is kind of like, I don't really think much about them. I don't have to pay any attention to them. But the Shiksha Guru and Diksha Guru are equal important in the life of spiritual progress, that one cannot simply think that if I, listen only to my Diksha Guru, then I'm okay, then I can completely disregard everybody else. But practically speaking, we find that in most cases, the disciple learns more from their Shiksha Gurus than they do from their Diksha Gurus, precisely because they spend more time with their Shiksha Gurus. So that's, I think, a healthy attitude, that we should kind of think in that direction. This is something that's become a theme that I'm hearing over and over again, especially in some of the online discussions we're having about ISKCON and its future and this and that and the other. That's how I would respond.
No, that's really actually this has basis even in Shastra, because even if you look at the trio, Narottam Das Thakur, Shyamananda Pandit, and Srimad Acharya, they all had different Diksha Gurus, but they all took shelter of Jiva Goswami, and they all learned under him as their primary teacher. And their gurus actually sent them to Jiva Goswami to learn, and then go take the message to Bengal. So, just wanted to add that. Is that anything else? Okay. Grantaraj Śrimad Bhāgavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Nitai Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.